7 things you probably didn't know you need to know. I'm Jamie East, and this is the Standout 7.
In the next 7 minutes or so, a bad week from Boris gets worse, Omicron sweeps through the nation, Time magazine is at it again with its Person of the Year award, and Penelope Cruz tells us exactly what went on at Prince's legendary Paisley Park parties. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7. Don't forget to hit the follow button to get daily updates at 7 a.m. All the talk of a tidal wave of Omicron cases couldn't spare Boris's blushes as the Mirror published a screenshot of him presiding over a Downing Street quiz on Zoom in breach of last Christmas's regulations. Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi says we've got it all wrong.
What do we see in that picture? We see a Prime Minister on a virtual quiz night for 10 to 15 minutes to thank his staff, who, by the way, had no choice but to come in every single day, sitting in his office with the 2 people who are closest working with him, no alcohol on the table, not drinking, right, on virtual call, respecting the lockdown rules.
Former Minister Edwina Currie had a somewhat backhanded compliment for the Prime Minister.
With all his faults, with all his strange personality traits, he is very far from being a saint, and in many ways he's a sinner. But not only is he the best that we've got, he's actually very good indeed at the job.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, on the other hand, was less than impressed by Boris's Zoom quiz antics at a time when the nation was locked down.
The Prime Minister's lost the authority to lead. He can't provide the leadership we need at this crucial time. He's the worst possible leader at the worst possible time.
Parliament voted on a string of new measures intended to slow the Omicron wave, including face masks and the use of vaccine passports as part of Boris's Plan B. It didn't go well for the embattled PM as 99 Tory MPs voted against his measures, but thanks to Labour's patriotic support, the legislation passed.
The ayes to the right, 441. The noes to the left, 41. So the ayes have it, unlock.
However, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer wasn't exactly congratulating Boris on the victory.
Well, this is a very significant blow to the already damaged authority of the Prime Minister. These public health measures would not have gone through if Labour hadn't shown the leadership that the Prime Minister failed to show by voting in the public interest. That's what we did, and it was because of our votes that these measures went through.
There was no good news yesterday when it came to COVID-19, with the highest number of daily cases so far in the entire pandemic. 78,610 new cases were reported and 165 deaths. And we can expect that record to be broken again and again as the Omicron variant spreads like wildfire. Boris was back in the Big Blue briefing room with some grim numbers and a warning to socialise sensibly this Christmas.
The doubling rate of Omicron in some regions is now down to less than 2 days, and I'm afraid we're also seeing the inevitable increase in hospitalisations, up by 10% nationally week on week, and up by almost a third in London.
And for those clinging to the hope that lower hospitalisation rates in South Africa mean that Omicron won't be as severe, Professor Chris Whitty says that unfortunately it's a question of maths and the speed at which the new variant is spreading.
If the rate of hospitalisation were to halve, but you're doubling every 2 days, in 2 days you're back to where you were before you actually had the hospitalisation. If the peak of this is twice as great, then halving of the hospitalisation rate, you still end up in the same place. And this peak is going very fast.
And that wasn't the end of the bad news either. Because Omicron and Delta are quite different in their characteristics, Omicron won't necessarily replace Delta.
If you look at the overall rates, it looks as if Delta, which we've had with us for a while, is still flat, and the growth is Omicron. So what we've got is 2 epidemics on top of one another, an existing Delta epidemic, roughly flat, and a growing Omicron, very rapidly growing Omicron epidemic on top of it.
Weeks of rows over Tory sleaze and COVID Christmas parties came home to roost early on Friday morning for Boris Johnson. North Shropshire, the seat held by former Tory MP Owen Paterson, who resigned after breaching rules on lobbying after the weeks-long row over Tory sleaze, fell to the Liberal Democrats. It was a safe Tory seat for almost 200 years, but a 34% swing towards the Lib Dems saw Helen Morgan elected as the new MP.
Tonight, the people of North Shropshire have spoken on behalf of the British people. They've said loudly and clearly, Boris Johnson, the party is over. Your government, run on lies and bluster, will be held accountable. It will be scrutinised, it will be challenged, and it can and will be defeated.
Liberal Democrats leader Ed Davey says this could be a watershed moment in politics, and North Shropshire's brand new MP laid it out clearly for Boris.
Mr Johnson, you are no leader. Many of your predecessors took office because they believed in a sense of national service, that they were duty-bound to do what they believed is right for our country, to represent all of us, even if we disagreed with them. Mr Johnson, this is not how you operate. Too often it is all about you and never about us.
Still to come on the Standout 7, someone's been reading Donald Trump's texts, and Penelope Cruz tells us what it's like to party with Prince. Right after this.
You're listening to the Smart 7. If you're enjoying it, you might also like the Smart 7 Ireland edition. Just search and follow us on your favourite podcast platform. In the United States, as the January the 6th committee continues their investigation into the events of the Capitol riot, Donald's former Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, has been held in contempt of Congress after he initially cooperated, handed over documents and then changed his mind. What he handed over has been a treasure trove of evidence against the former president, including a very treasonous PowerPoint and plenty of text messages received on the day of the Capitol riots from well-known names.
Multiple Fox News hosts knew the president needed to act immediately. They texted Mr. Meadows, and he has turned over those texts. Quote, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy, Laura Ingraham wrote. Please get him on TV. Destroying everything you have accomplished, Brian Kilmeade texted.
Now Washington, D.C. has announced a civil lawsuit against the Proud Boys and other extremist groups involved in January the 6th. Time magazine are at it again. They've just announced their Person of the Year. Remember, it's not the best Person of the Year, as Donald Trump would like to think. It's intended to reflect the events and significance to what happened in 2021. Here's Time CEO Edward Fessinthal to explain why he picked the world's richest man, Elon Musk.
In becoming the richest person in the history of the world, this year really speaks to the moment we're in, to this very complex moment in the world. We are in this kind of new Gilded Age where, like it or not, so much of our lives, even in this moment of incredible inequality, are being shaped by these very wealthy tech leaders.
Penelope Cruz has a new movie out this Christmas. It's called Parallel Mothers, and it's already picked up 2 Golden Globe nominations. She's been partying this week after a ceremony at New York's Museum of Modern Art to celebrate her career. She popped up on Jimmy Fallon's show, and while talking about famous parties she's been to, revealed what it was like to party at Prince's house. Oh.
Those parties were the parties. I mean, I'm not very much a party person, but when I went to those, I would stay there until 5 because the amazing things that were happening in that living room. You could see Stevie Wonder singing with Alicia Keys, and Pharrell dancing with Diddy and with Justin Timberlake, and and then Prince would join and play for a while, and then he would put the pajamas and come back and say good night, and he would go to bed and leave all of us there.
This has been the Standout 7, the best of the week from the Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow, 7 a.m. with the Sunday 7. Have a great rest of your weekend.